Welcome. My name is Lee Freudenheim. I'm the board chair of the Alliance. Welcome to the 28th Annual Preservation Achievement Awards. On behalf of Allison, Leah, and Greg, our amazing and amazingly overworked staff, the young advisors, and the board of directors, thanks so much for coming out tonight. Could all the board of directors stand up just for a minute? And there are so many other people that helped out. A special thanks to Bob Beal, Richard Bertman, Roger Berkowitz, Ron Drucker, Frederick Kramer, and Lynn Spencer for all of your efforts in making tonight a success. It really has been a success. We did everything we wanted to do and more, and it's all because of you. Thank you. And to our 100 sponsors and 10,000 voters for the awards. It's pretty amazing. Thank you. But I'd like to recognize someone very, very special. And it's really hard to do because you can see me, but I can't see you at all. But this woman has been at the heart and soul of this alliance for, well, really since it's begun. And for the past 38 years has championed our cause in every way she knows how. And sometimes she yells at me, but generally speaking, I think we're doing okay by her eyes. And she's sitting right over there, and her name is Susan Park. Thank you so much. If you don't know Susan, take a moment and say hello. Be careful if you give her your opinion on something because she'll give you hers, I assure you. But she is truly a remarkable lady and has done so much for the Alliance for so many years. There's really nothing else I can say. Today's an exciting time to live in Boston, but it's also a challenging time. We're so desperately trying to preserve what we love about the city, but we're also embracing its inevitable changes, and we're winning. We're doing really well. The city remains vibrant, culturally flooded environment, filled with great history. We're lucky to live here, we really are. Tonight we're going to celebrate 11 outstanding projects, but there are so many more. And most importantly, there's so much work left to do. So I urge you, stay in touch with us as we continue to do what we do. Get involved. Let us know when something's on your mind. Because at the end of the day, we're all part of the same family that loves this city, we really are. So thank you so much for being here. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our leader and my friend, Greg Gaylor.
Thank you, Lee. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad to see, well, before the lights change, be able to see a lot of familiar and new faces, and thank you all for supporting the Alliance and the work we do throughout the year as the voice that makes sure Boston retains the uniqueness that makes it so successful. Speaking of supporting us, please feel free to live tweet or Snapchat, follow, or whatever else you might want to do on social media related to tonight's event. Our social media channels are always active and a great way to stay connected, but tonight, let those unable to be with us tonight know what's going on here. Welcome to the Paramount Theatre. What an amazing place. It opened in 1932, was closed in 1976 and reopened in 2010, thanks to the spectacular work of Emerson College, supported by many, including the Alliance and Mayor Menino, who had a vision many others were challenged to embrace. Now, given that pigeons and other detritus and deterioration literally littered this place, that was certainly understandable. But it's as hard now to imagine that past as it was then to envision this that you see around you tonight, not too many years ago. The Paramount is a spectacular example of how historic preservation can rejuvenate an area and how important it is to look at challenges as opportunities. We thank Emerson for leading the way here in the historic Ladder Blocks District and thank them for their generosity hosting us once again in this spectacular venue. Now, speaking of the Ladder Blocks, I'm pleased to announce tonight that the historic Ladder Blocks District, which is the area from Washington to Tremont Street, from Avery just around the corner all the way up to School Street, the Ladder Blocks was just last week placed on the 2016 list of most endangered historic resources in Massachusetts. The Alliance submitted this nomination to highlight the tremendous opportunities the historic resources here provide, to encourage more of the vision that brought us this wonderful theater. So stay tuned. More information will be forthcoming, and we look forward to your support in keeping the historic Ladder Block an exciting place to be. I want to join Lee in thanking those that make the Alliance's work possible. In addition to our board, there's our board of young advisors, the next generation of Preservation Alliance leaders, many here tonight, many who are helping out in the lobby. Our award selection committee that works tirelessly on the many nominations we receive, an increasing number every year, to come to tonight's event with a great selection. Our honorary committee for their hard work and also for putting up with my many phone calls and emails. Our organizational and individual members who make us a truly strong alliance working throughout the city. In our 100 sponsors that Lee mentioned, these corporate members support the Alliance's work, and through that large number demonstrate that preservation is for everyone, and it works hand in hand with the future development of the city. But in particular, I do want to acknowledge our Alliance leaders and underwriters: Moriarty, Elkis Manfredi, Shawmut Design and Construction, Robert Beal, the Drucker Companies, and the Boston Red Sox. Before you hear about our winners, a few logistical items. This year, in order to allow entire project teams to be recognized, not just having a few select people come on the stage as we've done before, when we announce each award, we're going to have anyone associated with a project in the audience stand and be recognized. People are way too important to miss someone, so we're going to try that different this year. So photographs of project teams will occur immediately after the ceremony up in the upper lobby, and I'll provide some information when we get there at the end of the event. So to hear about this year's winners, I'm going to put you in the capable hands of Roger Tackiff, Alliance Vice Chair and Award Selections Committee Chairman. Roger has been a steadfast presence at the Alliance for many years and remains one of our most engaged and active board members. Roger, thank you for all you do, and I'm pleased to hand the podium over to you.
Thank you. You want these notes, you want to leave them?
Just put it on top.
Good evening, everyone. I hope I lived up to Greg's expectations. So, good evening. It's my honor to welcome each and every one of you who cared enough at the end of a busy day to join us here this evening to celebrate some of Boston's finest architectural and preservation achievements. Thank you, Greg, for your kind introduction. And I'm sure that most of you are aware that Greg is in his 5th year as our executive director. Although I'm sure to Greg, it seems like a lifetime. Most of you have had the opportunity to get to know Greg firsthand and know what a superb job he is doing. For the Alliance and how his indefatigable energies contribute to preserving Boston's historic places, promoting its future vibrancy, and enhancing our city's character. For all of you in this room who know me, and for many of you who know me too well, I've always been a bit of a political junkie and forever connected to the news of the day or even the hour, much to my wife Mary Ann's dismay. While I know better in the context of this award ceremony to even think of sharing my own political passions, I hope I can speak for almost all of us by saying we're exhausted by the demands of our democracy, especially in this election cycle, and are thankful that the election is only a few weeks away. While candidates repeatedly tell us what is wrong with our country, its cities, and its people, I'm before you tonight to hopefully give you an enjoyable respite from the intensity of politics and share with you some of what is so right and so wonderful about the city of Boston, our city. The Boston Preservation Alliance, the Alliance, has for more than 4 decades done our best to be the guardian of our city's architectural heritage. We have been advocates and collaborators, fighting to save and preserve the iconic Fenway Park, our city's splendid and historic theater venues, such as the one we're in, some of the most important religious and institutional structures, hundreds of other significant buildings, and even Boston's wonderful open space and public art. Today, we remain as committed as always to the preservation and restoration of Boston's special historic fabric. But we are also intimately involved in so much of the new construction in our city, which is truly exploding, and how it impacts our built environment. Our goal is to preserve and fight for Boston's unique heritage and help to make certain that our city's growth doesn't overwhelm the past, but serves to enhance the future. Thank you all for your involvement and your contributions to the future of Boston. This evening, we are here to recognize and celebrate the vision, passion, and dedication of this year's award recipients. You are helping to write the story of what is best about our city for decades to come. As you will see during the presentation of the awards, those visions for the future have also included preserving our enviable historic fabric as well. Together, they are why visitors, students, and the next generation are choosing Boston as their home. So without further ado, let me begin with the first award. Our first Preservation Achievement Award is for the extraordinary development of the Bruce Bolling Municipal Center in Boston's historic Dudley Square. The project was a part of Mayor Menino's Dudley Square Vision Project, which sought to revitalize Boston's once thriving Dudley neighborhood. As most of us know, this project received not only the guidance, but the full passion of our city's much beloved urban mechanic, Tom Menino. This project was a part of Mayor Menino's DNA, and Mayor Walsh, demonstrating great continuity between administrations, spearheaded the effort to additionally integrate into the Bolling Building the new Roxbury Innovation Center, serving as a catalyst for local innovation and entrepreneurship. This development, which encompasses an entire city block, occupies a site that originally served as the only land connection to downtown Boston, enabling our city to remain well protected from attack by land because it was nearly completely surrounded by its deep-water harbor. In the late part of the 19th century, the three elegant structures were constructed on the site: the Ferdinand Building, the Curtis, and the Waterman buildings. Their preservation and restoration was in many respects the central cornerstone to the revitalization of Dudley Square. Mayor Menino and his team knew that these historic buildings couldn't be redeveloped on speculation without an economic engine. Therefore, the mayor endeavored to address two city problems with one very creative solution. The solution was to relocate all 6 outdated and inefficient locations of the Boston Public Schools administrative offices, serving some 56,000 students and 125 public schools, into one architecturally significant, efficient central location. In a highly competitive process, the City of Boston engaged the services of 2 architectural teams: the internationally renowned Dutch firm of Makanu and the well-respected local firm of Sasaki. Together, they were challenged to reach out for a new civic vision for both the school department and Dudley Square. Their triumph included the restoration of these 3 historic buildings, creating a triangle of facades intended to maintain the existing feel and scale of Dudley Square, and then adding a powerful modern aesthetic of new construction. The development is literally at the geographic center of the city and across the street from a major public transportation hub. For the new building, elements in relief cast intricate shadows across one another in a playful, jazzy rhythm. The vitreous properties of the brick reflect light in different ways, depending on the weather conditions, using different masonry techniques, from running to stack to soldier bond. With a transparent plinth on the ground floor, known as the New Dudley Square, and a beacon-line crown on the top, the form of the building defers to and enhances the urban grid. The building is characterized by glazed walls and bright daylight streaming in, reinforcing the ideas of government transparency that help to enhance an open and inviting feel for visitors and employees alike. The ground floor provides shops and restaurants that spill into the two-story lobby, which serves as an inviting gathering space for the community. The second floor is a public interaction zone, incorporating the school committee meeting room and family-related functions as well. The second floor lighting pays homage to the elevated train tracks that once ran through the space. The top floor provide a public meeting space adjacent to the dramatic roof terrace, accessible to all, offering vistas across the metropolis towards downtown and the water beyond. The Bolling Building is located in the Dudley Station Historic District on the National Registry of Historic Places. The building has united 500 school department employees into a centralized location in a project that encompasses 215,000 square feet, including 18,500 square feet of neighborhood retail space. The Bolling Building well achieved its objectives of serving as a catalyst for the economic development of Dudley Square, and is a wonderful new home for the Boston Public School Department, serving the needs of Boston's school children. Congratulations to the entire development team of the Bruce C. Bolling Municipal Building. Would you be kind enough to stand up and be recognized? Thank you. Thank you. This is truly a landmark project, and you see how many participants it takes to pull something like this off and do such a great job. Our next award winner is the Carlton, Cooper, and Walnut Houses in Roxbury. One of the most enviable benefits of being a part of the awards committee is driving through the city's neighborhoods, never really knowing what to expect when we finally arrive at a nominated site. Such was the case with the Carlton, Cooper, and Walnut Houses in Roxbury. What we were drawn to as preservationists were three National Historic Register buildings. In 1892, the Home for Aged Couples since 1892, the Home for Aged Couples has stood stately over Franklin Park, near Eggleston Square. Once serving as the Elizabeth Carlton House, the Home for Aged Couples, and the offices of the Council of Elders, the site was vacated in the mid-1990s, and it sat empty for nearly a decade. It took another decade for the innovative and creative nonprofit Rogerson Communities, with their partner Forward, Inc., to restore this 3-acre property and its historic structures into one community. The campus now offers 44 affordable apartments with no age limit in the Carlton House, 34 units of affordable housing restricted to the needs of a mental health population in the Walnut House, and 37 elderly affordable apartments in the Cooper House. These three distinctive historic buildings, together with a fourth newly constructed, form a cohesive campus for residents and visitors alike. The new addition is sensitively designed to meld with the historic architecture rather than overwhelm it or distract from it. Creating affordable housing in Boston or in any other major American city can be incredibly challenging, but doing so within the context of historic architecture and without relocating any of the tenants off-site is an extraordinary accomplishment. A formerly blighted site now contributes to the Roxbury neighborhood and some of its most at-risk residents. Rogerson Communities previously received a Preservation Achievement Award for providing senior affordable housing for the Chinese community in some of the oldest and most important commercial buildings in Boston in the Hunlock House on Essex Street. Congratulations to the entire team from the Rogerson Communities and Forward Incorporated, and please stand up and be recognized. Great. There they are. Great job. Our next award is for the complex and faithful restoration of the executive offices of the Massachusetts State House. We are so privileged to live in a city that is not only immersed in its own history, but in the history of America. We owe a great debt of gratitude to those generations that came before us for ensuring that our most important historic buildings, that in many respects define who we are, remain intact and preserved. Few buildings could be more iconic to our state's heritage than the Massachusetts State House, the seat of government for all of the Commonwealth's residents. The restoration work of our State House seems always to be a work in progress, given its nearly 600,000 square feet and the need for it to be continually operational as its magnificent architecture is faithfully preserved. Our imposing Gold Dome State House, one of the oldest in the nation, was designed by Boston's renowned architect Charles Bulfinch and was occupied in 1798. Charles Bulfinch, the quintessential Boston architect, was, of course, educated at Boston Latin School and Harvard University. After a great tour of Europe, he returned to Boston to leave his distinguished signature on our city. From the Harrison Gray Otis House, where the BPA is fortunate enough to have our offices, to the Boston Common, to the remodeling and enlargement of Faneuil Hall, to University Hall at Harvard, to the famed Ether Dome at Massachusetts General Hospital. I could go on. Bulfinch's dignified, classical style became his signature. In 1818, President James Monroe appointed Charles Bulfinch as the architect of the Capitol in Washington, D.C. The Massachusetts State House is the most prominent landmark situated at the crest of Beacon Hill, and its magnificence is visible from myriad vantage points, from Boston to Cambridge, even looking up the long vistas of the Charles River as far away as the BU Bridge, sitting proudly at the intersection of Beacon and Park Street, standing watch over the Boston Common and the Public Garden. The State House's executive offices had not had a comprehensive restoration in more than a century. At a time when there are so many demands on the state's resources, this important restoration of our Commonwealth's seat of government and its executive offices seem all the more praiseworthy. The highly skilled team, led by Feingold Alexander, engaged in a careful and oftentimes complex investigation of the original colonial finishes, and were even able to identify and restore to the executive offices their unanticipated and dramatic original color palette. Special care was paid to seamlessly incorporating new temperature controls, fire protection, updated security systems, universal accessibility, and most especially to minimizing the visual impact of these contemporary code requirements. The museum quality restoration, which included the suite comprising the governor's corner office, the adjacent council chamber, the formal reception space, the office of the lieutenant governor, and the governor's assistant, are truly a gift to us all, who proudly call the Commonwealth of Massachusetts our home. Congratulations to the entire team for the restoration of our State House's executive office. Please stand and let us. There they are. All right. The next one's a little bit of a departure. Our next award winner is a departure from the grand monuments and large-scale restorations of our city's most prominent architecture. Nestled in what is truly one of the most special neighborhoods in Boston, Ashmont Hill in Dorchester, is an architectural jewel. 31 Ocean Street on Ashmont Hill is a charming carriage house built in the latter part of the 19th century. As our city evolved from an agrarian to an industrial economy, carriage houses, work sheds, and for lack of a better word, outbuildings often still remained. They were initially essential parts of their homestead, used to house horses, carriages, farm animals, equipment, everyday tools, and workspace. Some of these buildings, if they were large enough, transitioned to other uses, including garages and general storage. Sadly, as these structures lost their purpose, they often went unattended, and many were lost forever. For the carriage house on Ocean Street, no one could describe it more eloquently than the owner, Nancy Anderson. When I first invited family and friends to see the 1894 carriage house I had purchased, they nodded, smiled, and basically humored me. 2 years later, I finally learned the truth. They thought I was crazy. They just couldn't see beyond the termite and the powdered beetle damage, the trees growing out of the foundation, or the general creepiness of the dirt floor basement. Actually, it was the rats and mice that had called 31 Ocean Street home. But now it was my home, and I had a vision. The restoration of this historic carriage house demonstrates how these special small buildings can be given new life. When Nancy first saw the dusty blue carriage house, it was being used as a garage. Gouges from the horses a century earlier had scored the wooden floor, and various successive renovations awkwardly filled in spaces. Nancy and her 3 children had a vision and an uncompromising determination to make this carriage house their new home. Their renovations began with extensive repairs to the exterior woodwork, which they then painted in historically appropriate colors. The family was passionate about retaining and restoring original historic details, and whenever possible, while creatively designing their future home with a spectacular open floor plan so valued for the hustle and bustle of today's family. The family now has the option of either entering their repurposed carriage house through a smaller front door or the original enormous rolling barn door that historically cordoned off the family's equine tenants. They repaired the rolling door, added a layer of insulation to the interior, and finally covered the door with salvage beadboard from the horse stalls. The restored barn entry door is now as snug as any contemporary door. The ceiling of their grand open living space is now covered with the barn's historic beanboard as well. The second floor loft, where previously groomsmen had been quartered, is now the family's bedrooms, and the smaller barn door slides across the new upstairs bathroom. Many of the city's smallest structures have distinctive architectures, story to tell, and often have unrealized opportunity. Helping to reimagine and rezone these buildings can provide unique and wonderful new living spaces and are an obvious way to increase our city's stock of housing and what would otherwise be forgotten historic jewels. Congratulations to Nancy Anderson, her family, and their team for their incredible determination and creativity. Please stand. Is Nancy here? Thank you. Great job. Thank you. Our next award is for the redevelopment of Lovejoy Wharf. As this dramatic historic photograph so vividly demonstrates, the Hoffman Building and the adjacent Lovejoy Wharf were, to quote the developer, an anonymous and neglected 20th century industrial brick structure. The project is located at the intersection of North Washington Street and Beverly Street, adjacent to the TD Garden. The building, situated in a backwater location of Boston Harbor, was sandwiched between two rusting truss bridges, separated from the Charles River locks by an aging wooden wharf. The Hoffman Building was originally constructed in 1906 by the William F. Schraft & Sons Confectionery Company. It was nothing quite like receiving a box of Schraft's variety chocolates when I was growing up. In the interest of full disclosure, my 4'11" grandmother, Lena, worked packing those chocolates into their signature boxes as her very first job in this building. The building was later used as a manufacturing facility by Raytheon's Submarine Signal Division in the 1940s. In the following years, as the building changed hands several times, a succession of incompatible commercial renovations and additions obscured much of the building's rich architectural detailing. In the 1980s, the building was used as a loft, but after 100 years of haphazard exterior modifications, the distressed building had become an urban eyesore and was nearly in collapse. In 2012, Related Beal purchased the property with a vision of saving the historic architecture and creating a viable signature landmark for the future. The strength of the development team attracted a single internationally branded tenant, Converse, who shared their vision and committed to transform the 214,000 square foot Hoffman Building into its new worldwide headquarters. I am told by my son David that I should know that this building was really built on the foundations of Converse's Chuck Taylor sneakers. In addition to the historically significant restoration, Related Beal added a dramatic new glass addition to this once dilapidated structure, transforming it into a highly visible landmark. This development has created a new gateway to Boston, standing proud as you arrive into the city across the historic Charlestown Bridge. In the interior, the development team created a spectacular serpentine staircase made from the reclaimed wood of the old, abandoned Lovejoy Wharf, which winds its way from the 1st to the 10th floor of their new headquarters. Enormous open floor plates with exposed beams are framed by spectacular views of the Boston skyline. The building has even achieved LEED Gold certification. Additionally, the building's design features a lobby that opens onto the recrafted Lovejoy Wharf, bringing the building's circulation out to the water's edge, providing both access and visual connectivity. The old dilapidated wharf was dismantled, and its timbers were creatively salvaged for new uses, not only within the building, but other projects as well. Where the historic wharf was previously located, the development team created a nearly 1-acre landscaped wharf with public open space and a 7,000 square foot retail pavilion. The new Lovejoy Wharf now provides a vibrant linkage along the water's edge between Boston's North End and the Esplanade, filling in yet another critical path of Boston's Harbor Walk. The new public space is used to accommodate a wide variety of gatherings, from intimate midday lunches to quiet reflection on its many benches along the water's edge, to space for larger crowds and even summer concerts. Congratulations to the related Beale companies and their entire development team for Lovejoy Wharf. Please stand to be recognized. Our next Preservation Achievement Award winner is for the restoration of the Soldiers and Sailors Monument on Boston Commons, Flagstaff Hill. At the meeting of the Common Council on the 8th of March, 1866, Mr. William Clement offered an order for the appointment of a joint committee to take into consideration the erecting of a monument in the city in some prominent place, commemorative of the fallen heroes who so heroically aided in putting down the Southern Rebellion and in sustaining the Constitution of our country and the Union of the United States. This order was passed without opposition, and the cornerstone was laid on September 18th, 1871, on Flagstaff Hill. The completed Soldiers and Sailors Monument was dedicated on September 17th, 1877. This imposing neoclassical monument has stood at the peak of Flagstaff Hill in the Common for more than a century. Its victory column, carved of Hallowell white granite, rises to a height of 126 feet, and the platform is 38 foot square. Surmounting the Doric column is a bronze allegorical figure titled America. She is crowned by 13 stars, and in her left hand holds the United States flag, and in her right hand she holds a laurel wreath and a sword. It commemorates the valor and sacrifice of the soldiers and sailors of the Civil War. Its elegant bronze figures, heroic themes, and massive stones combine to create a quintessential monument of its type. The base bears the following inscription: "To the men of Boston who died for their country on land and sea and in the war, which kept the Union whole, destroyed slavery, and maintained the Constitution. The grateful city has built this monument that their examples may speak to coming generations." Despite the monument's historic significance and prominent location, for decades, the monument suffered from neglect. The figure in relief had lost arms and heads. The stonework was engulfed with graffiti. Curbs had settled, pavers had shifted, and the lighting system had been vandalized beyond repair. In 2004, the damage escalated exponentially. The figure of Army was knocked from the pedestal by vandals, who then tried to make off with the figure's head, dropping it yards from the monument on the path. The bronze figures were finally removed and sadly awaited their fate, seemingly forever lost in a municipal storage facility. Fortunately, that is not the end of the story. A joint effort of the Boston Arts Commission and the Boston Parks and Recreation Department, under the leadership of the then Commissioner Tony Pollock, I might add a Codman Award winner and former executive director of the Alliance, identified a $100,000 sum of money to begin the restoration of the project. The city's Brown Fund also supported this effort with a grant, as did the Friends of the Public Garden. The city's Landmark and Arts Commission provided their expertise and guidance, and in 2013, the figures were returned to their rightful place. The final efforts were accomplished by the city's newly appointed Parks Commissioner, Chris Cook, who completed the conservation and restoration of this monument. The restoration of the Soldiers and Sailors Monument was timed to mark the sesquicentennial, I got it out, of the end of the Civil War. The restoration began in 2012 with the conservation of 4 bronze figures: Army, Navy, Peace, and History, and 4 bronze relief castings depicting events of the Civil War. The project included the cleaning and conservation of the enormous Doric granite column, capped by a bronze allegorical figure, and the 4 marble eagles perched at her feet. Landscape improvements encompassed the renovation of the pathways, including the reconstruction of an existing pathway to accommodate an accessible route, the paving and edge treatments of the existing pathways and plaza, art and site lighting, and lawn rejuvenation and vegetation management. On a quiet fall weekend, take the time to stroll through the Boston Common and see this wonderful piece of public art, a monument to the sacrifice of Bostonians during the Civil War. Congratulations to the Boston Parks and Recreation Department and their entire dedicated development team for their efforts. Please stand and allow us to meet you. One of the disadvantages of being up here is I know there are people out there, but I can't see you, so I don't know when people are standing, so I apologize. Our next award winner is the Boston University School of Law. With each new generation of architectural styles, past tastes and preferences become increasingly outdated and sometimes difficult to appreciate. At one time, Harvard's extraordinary Memorial Hall, with its Victorian exuberance, was considered ostentatious and an embarrassment to the Harvard community, and there was actually a movement to tear it down. When I first began my career in real estate, I was so enthralled with the contemporary vernacular of earth tones, sandblasted brick walls, and bright orange counters, considered so chic then, and apparently back in vogue today. Just last week, my son Michael proudly texted Marianne and me photographs of his cool new apartment at Vanderbilt, where he is attending law school. His proudest possession is his bright orange couch, situated on poured concrete floors and next to the kitchen's brutalist contemporary concrete counters. It seems, in my humble opinion, much of what goes around comes around. Civic leaders and citizens alike, myself included, often have difficulty appreciating, much less embracing, the austere styles of the mid-century brutalist movement. The looming concrete facades, often called fortress-like, are considered by some heavy and unwelcoming. Architectural brutalism became popular worldwide for important civic, educational, and institutional structures in the mid-half of the 20th century. It was unapologetic in its imposing character. In our own city, Boston's new City Hall is perhaps one of the most important examples of that style. However, with a new generation of civic leaders, young preservationists, and the advocacy group Docomomo coming into their own, we have all begun to take a new look at the importance of mid-century modern architecture. And some of us are slowly but surely able to learn new things. In the 1960s, Boston University commissioned one of the most important architects in the country, the dean of Harvard's Graduate School of Design, to build their new law school on the banks of the Charles River. Joseph Surt, the architect and urban designer, now of international prominence, designed for BU one of the greatest collections of mid-century modern brutalist buildings in the country, complete with a 265-foot tower punctuating the skyline. The tower is noteworthy for its sculptural presence, states Brunecott's principal, Henry Moss. Its elevations are composed of highly articulated, cantilevered volumes that form the armature for the window scuppers and precast spandrels. The projecting compositions are not applied. They are part of the structure, remarks founding principal Lee Cott. For decades, Boston University had tried to adapt their mid-century modern law school's architecture to the increasingly sophisticated demands of now a world-class law school. The inevitable conclusion had always been to tear down the buildings and start anew. Fortunately, two of Boston's most distinguished architects, Henry Moss and Lee Cott, had both been students of Surt's at Harvard's Graduate School of Design. They persuaded BU to allow them to renovate and repurpose these important buildings for today's contemporary needs. When the team began, the interior circulation was in conflict with and not conducive to today's educational environment. The building's envelope posed many challenges, primarily due to age and deferred maintenance. Its cast-in-place frame and precast panels were spalling, exposing the structural rebar, and the building's steel-framed, single-glazed windows were drafty and leak-prone. The tower was outdated in other ways, most especially having no student gathering space or collaborative spaces. Brunacott began by building a glass and limestone-clad 5-story addition, which is expressed as glazed volumes which project from the smooth limestone facade. The new gathering space includes a cafe overlooking the river and a double-story winter garden that serves as the lobby. The architectural teams programmed the space by moving classrooms out of the upper reaches of the tower and placing them, along with new spaces for group study and socializing, in the new addition or in the lower levels of the CERT building. The tower's upper floors would be given over to the administration and faculty offices, where their occupants would enjoy spectacular views of Boston and Cambridge from the Charles River. In the renovation, old and new construction are clearly and purposefully distinguished from each other. Muscular concrete stands out against a relatively delicate paneled wall. Boston University, Brunacott, and their development team have clearly demonstrated that mid-century modern brutalist architecture can be celebrated with new vibrancy for future generations to appreciate. Congratulations to the Boston University School of Law and their entire development team. Please stand up. Where are they? The next one's a fun one, too. Our next award winner is the Boston Light on Little Brewster Island. In blinding fog and blustery nor'easters, a single light guides the way through Boston Harbor. Since 1716, whaling ships, schooners, and cargo vessels have looked to Boston Light to guide them safely into the harbor. Prior to the construction of Boston Light, sailing vessels were forced to navigate their way into Boston Harbor through only a 1-mile passage between Hull and Little Brewster Island without any navigational aids. The channel presented quite literally death-defying challenges: invisible ledges, whipping winds, blinding fog, and of course, the perils of Boston's legendary winter storms. Many ships were lost only a short distance from safe harbor. Bostonians finally decided to put an end to the loss of life, and so a group of local merchants petitioned to erect a lighthouse station. Sailors' prayers were answered on September 14, 1716, when Little Brewster Island's newly built Boston Light was first illuminated with tallow candles. Along with the lighthouse, a wharf, a keeper's house, and a barn were also erected. It would be almost half a century before New York had its first lighthouse. The first keeper, George Worthylake, received a salary of 50 pounds a year. Unfortunately, in 1718, he and his family and 2 other men drowned when their lighthouse boat capsized as they were returning to the island from church in Boston. A 12-year-old upstart printer by the name of Benjamin Franklin wrote a ballad about the incident entitled Lighthouse Tragedy and hawked it on the streets of Boston. Franklin later wrote in his autobiography that the poem was wretched stuff, although it sold prodigiously. In 1774, the British overtook the island, and in 1775, as we all know, they blockaded Boston Harbor, and they rendered the lighthouse useless. On July 31st, 1775, General George Washington dispatched 300 men in whaleboats who defeated the British Guard, but in the battle, much damage was done to the original structure. In a final act of defiance, as the British left their occupation of Boston Harbor on June 16, 1776, they set off a timed charge on Lighthouse Island, completely destroying the tower. The colonists, undeterred, melted down the remains of the metal lantern to make ladles for American cannons. In 1783, the Boston Marine Society persuaded the Massachusetts legislature to erect a new lighthouse on the site. That new lighthouse stands 89 feet tall, with a focal height of 102 feet, with walls that are 7.5 feet thick at the base and taper to 2.5 feet thick at the top. On June 10, 1790, Boston Light became the responsibility of our new federal government. In 1964, the lighthouse was designated a National Historic Landmark. In 1989, because of the lighthouse's historic importance, and with the sponsorship of Edward M. Kennedy, an amendment was passed to the Coast Guard reauthorization bill to keep the station permanently manned. Boston Light, restored by the Coast Guard for its 300th anniversary this month, remains one of our city's most important historic landmarks. The preservation project had two main goals: to complete the cosmetic and structural repairs to the lighthouse and surrounding structures, and to make Boston Light environmentally friendly. As you might imagine, the logistics of undertaking such a restoration in the middle of Boston Harbor proved daunting. The restoration included remilling nearly all of the exterior wood and window frames, replacing the building's roofs with historically accurate cedar shingles, and a complete refacing of the tower itself with mortar to seal the granite blocks. The current light is a second-order Fresnel lens with 1,800,000 candle power, visible from 27 nautical miles, which flashes every 10 seconds. And in the fog, the horn bellows out every 30 seconds. One needs to climb 76 stairs to get to the lens, which has 336 individual prisms with 12 bullseyes and weighs 4,000 pounds. Boston Light, aptly dubbed the ideal American lighthouse by the historian Edward Snow, holds a place of honor among our nation's beacons. She was the first light station established on the North American continent, and the last in the United States to be automated. It is also our nation's only light station that still retains an official keeper, the 70th for Boston Light. Today, that position is held by Coast Guard Lightkeeper Dr. Sally R. Snowman, the first female lighthouse keeper in the Coast Guard's history. We applaud the U.S. Coast Guard for recognizing the significance to Boston and the nation of Boston Light. May she light the way into a safe Boston harbor for centuries to come. Will the development team please stand up and be recognized from the Coast Guard? Thank you. There they are. Thank you. They were easy to tell. They were in white uniforms. That was easy. Thank you. Our next award winner is the Verb Hotel. The hotel, formerly the Fenway Motor Court, known to most Bostonians as Hojo's or Howard Johnson's, was built in 1959. It was a fairly typical motor court hotel or motel, exhibiting the styles and trends of mid-century America in a car-centric society that actually allowed guests to park their car at their room. The motel is so close to Fenway that you can even smell the Fenway Franks and popcorn wafting over the swimming pool, and up until recently, hear the crowds roar as Big Papi belted out yet another home run. In the 1960s, the Fenway Motor Court became a favorite for both ever-hopeful Sox fans and rebellious music lovers alike. The music scene along Lansdowne Street and in the Fenway, with such venues as The Rat, The Tea Party, became staples of the rebellious Woodstock generation, what our parents didn't know. Unfortunately, over the years, Boylston Street declined into a neighborhood characterized by gas stations, parking lots for Fenway, fast food restaurants, muffler shops, and car dealerships. Over the last decade, Samuels and Associates has had the vision to develop building after building along Boylston Street, seeing value in its proximity to downtown, the Longwood Medical Area, and the Fenway ahead of everyone else. They quite literally transformed a blighted and forgotten commercial no man's land into one of the chicest, most desirable new neighborhoods in the city, complete with thousands of apartments, trendy retail stores such as REI and West Elm, and hot new restaurants such as Saloniki, Basho Japanese Brasserie, Citizen Public, and even Tasty Burger. In their latest completed venture, amidst so much new construction, the Samuels team joined in partnership with Boston's renowned hotelier Robin Brown and Weiner Ventures to reimagine the Fenway's Hojo Motor Court into the Verb Hotel. Their edgy and risky decision not to tear down the mid-century architecture, but to celebrate it and have fun with it took great courage. By combining the rich palette of rock and roll history with the treasures of Fenway's past, the Verb Hotel emerged with a new and cool identity defined by pop culture from the 50s and 60s Boston Phoenix headlines, and baseball memorabilia. Every wall of the Verb seems to come alive with a different story. Today, this hip, vibrant 21st century motel, now a hotel in the shadow of Fenway Park, has been redesigned with custom-crafted mid-century modern furniture. Every one of the 94 rooms seems to have its own story, from vinyl albums and turntables to Boston Phoenix front pages and even manual typewriters. Preservation isn't just about bricks and mortar and the Freedom Trail and historic churches or brownstones. It's about celebrating a wide variety of the historic fabric and culture that define our city's neighborhoods. Nothing sends that message better than a funky hotel called the Verb, where rockers, madmen, and Forever Sox fans feel at home. Congratulations to the Samuels, Brown, and Weiner organizations. Where are they? There they are. Our next preservation achievement is for the renovation and restoration of the Godfrey Hotel just a few doors down on Washington Street. The Great Fire of Legend, Boston's Great Fire of Legend, began in the basement of a commercial warehouse on Summer Street at 7:20 p.m. on November 9th, 1872. The fire was finally contained 12 hours later, after having decimated 65 acres of downtown Boston, 776 buildings, and more than 1,000 commercial establishments, including much of the financial district. Thousands of Bostonians found themselves jobless and homeless after the fire. But miraculously, there were only 13 deaths from the inferno. The fire was fueled by unsafe and often over-insured buildings, flammable wooden mansard roofs, which enabled embers to spread from roof to roof, fire alarm boxes that were locked to prevent false alarms, old water pipes, low pressure, and extraordinarily, a horse flu epidemic, which had immobilized Boston firefighters' equipment. Out of this all-consuming Boston inferno emerged a rethinking of fire safety, both in Boston and nationally. Like a phoenix rising out of the ashes, Boston's decimated downtown was destined to be rebuilt. In 1904, the Amory Building was built, and in 1908, the adjacent Blake Building was constructed, both designed by noted Boston architect Arthur Honeywell Bowditch. Arthur Bowditch was also the architect of the very theater we are in tonight, the Paramount, built in 1932. These buildings were constructed using the new modern steel frame with large window openings that were being introduced to commercial buildings after the fire of 1872. The later part of the 20th century saw the decline of the Washington Street corridor into what we all know as the combat zone. The renovation of these two buildings offers an important contribution to the revitalization of this once again vibrant commercial and residential district. Renamed the Godfrey Hotel, the ensemble of the Amory and Blake buildings exemplifies how Boston's historic architecture, with the utilization of rehabilitation tax credits, can be reimagined for a new use and a new future. While each of these buildings retains its own distinctive character, they have been brought together at street level with complementary storefronts. The exterior is notable for its distinctive Gothic styling, and the interior features a decidedly more modern vision, while maintaining the historic special interior's architectural features, most especially the elevator lobby and marble staircase. The Godfrey Hotel offers 242 rooms in a boutique hotel that melds heritage and the district's exciting future. Once a visitor has passed from the classic terracotta exuberance of the building's exterior and from the hustle and bustle of Washington Street's new vibrancy, you find yourself in a lobby with a cool palette of grays and whites and browns, accented, of course, by a splash of orange. The hotel's emphasis on technology will actually allow visitors to simply use an app to check in, obtain your key, upgrade your room, change your checkout time, change your view, and even order food. If you choose to use the front desk, it will be adjacent to their craft bar, serving specialty cocktails, and alongside the newest iteration of George Howell's Artisan Coffee Shop, which many of us once knew as the Coffee Connection, even predating Starbucks. The Godfrey Hotel is a wonderful example of preserving the past while integrating the future. This successful and chic boutique hotel has been redeveloped entirely within the envelope of the historic buildings, adding vitality and energy to the historic Ladderbrook district. Congratulations to the entire team from the Oxford Capital Group for the Godfrey Hotel. Please stand up and be recognized. All right. And our final award winner this evening is the wonderful Burnham Building, known to generations of Bostonians as Filene's, and of course, Filene's Basement. In the heart of the 20th century, the prominent Boston retailers William Filene's and Sons commissioned the influential Chicago architect Daniel Burnham to design their new flagship department store in the heart of Boston's retail shopping district. Burnham had previously designed the Marshall Fields department store in Chicago in advance of the 1893 Columbian Exposition. Filene was actually the last building that Burnham designed and was completed in 1912. The Filene's department store, like its predecessor at both Marshall Fields and Selfridges, created a progressive and innovative model for American department store retailing through their design palette, which embraced rich materials surrounded by Beaux-Arts detailing. The 8-level Filene store was also a part of an early generation of structures that employed steel frames instead of massive bearing walls, an innovation that would later pave the way for much taller skyscrapers. When the Filene's department store opened on September 3rd, 1912, the store attracted more than 230,000 people, representing 1 out of every 3 Bostonians at the time. In 1929, Filene's expanded and converted the entire block into its signature store, which served as its anchor retail establishment in Boston for most of the remaining part of the 20th century. While patrons were drawn both by the retailer's vast array of products as much as the building's architecture, Burnham's design provided a unique shopping experience, with separate departments for men and women's clothes, a barber shop, a soda fountain, and even an elegant tea room. Through their far-sighted vision and technical skills, Burnham and his partner John Root made their firm influential. The pair mixed modern engineering and building techniques with classical design, winning prominent commissions, from planning the Chicago World's Fair to designing the Flatiron Building in New York, and even Washington, D.C.'s Union Station. Unfortunately, over the decades, the Filene's block lost a great deal of its distinctiveness. Through a succession of alterations, including much of its detailed ironwork, its terracotta ornamentation, and the removal of the large display windows that were such an important part of the innovation in merchandising. For those of us who have been around long enough to remember, those grand storefront windows along Washington Street, best exemplified by Filene's and its competitor Jordan Marsh, were a child's Christmas rite of passage, never to be forgotten. After a number of false starts by a series of developers, Millennium Partners, led by Tony Pangaro and Handel Architects, reimagined the complex redevelopment of the Burnham Building. While the development also incorporates a dramatic 600-foot residential tower, the most celebrated aspect of this development to the preservation community was Millennium's incredibly well-done restoration of the Burnham Building. The team, using historic tax credits, faithfully restored the elegant exterior of the historic Beaux-Arts structure, including the restoration of the terracotta, the recreation of the oversized storefront windows, and the finely detailed metal and glass canopies. Using Burnham's original designs and period photographs, they imbued the restoration with historic ambience and integrity. The result is a meticulously restored Boston landmark, paying homage to not only Burnham's work, but American life at the start of the 20th century. In the fall of 2015, on the retail level, the Irish retail chain Primark opened its only location in the United States, adjacent to the Roach Brothers Urban Grocery, with its cafe spilling out onto the sidewalk. The floors above the retail space are leased as office space. Now thousands of shoppers a day stream in and out of the Burnham Building, enlivening downtown Crossing with vibrancy. The restoration demonstrates how important existing structures can be faithfully restored to meet today's fast-paced world. Congratulations to the entire Millennium Partners team who have transformed Washington Street from the new Ritz to their striking residential tower, but most especially for saving and magnificently restoring the Burnham Building. Please stand up and be recognized. Great job. So, thank you so much for your kind attention. And since I'm pretty certain that you've heard more than enough from me, it's now my pleasure to turn over the program to Greg Gaylor, our Executive Director. And thank you again.
All right, so those are the 11 project winners, and now a few more items. Our selection committee has often been challenged with projects that clearly demonstrate the highest quality of preservation work, like the many that you just heard about, but projects that are also impactful, thoughtful, and worthy of recognition, but don't meet our criteria that a project must be done by the end of the preceding calendar year. Preservation takes time, patience, a skilled team, and funding. And for non-commercial projects, typically managed by nonprofits and small organizations, taking on the challenge of doing it all and being done is a near impossibility. Work is phased, pieces are segregated, and tackled one by one. And it's that TLC over years, over decades, even over generations, that stewardship we should be recognizing and rewarding, in addition to those projects who benefit from the ability to tackle it all in one pass. Good stewards recognize that we're just temporary caretakers of these treasures, and it's our job to leave them in better shape than we find them. So this year, at the suggestion of our president, Susan Park, who was pointed out earlier by Lee, we inaugurate our stewardship recognition, where we share a few projects who exemplify the successful work that's never done, but it is plugging away in remarkable ways. The Air Mansion is one of the hidden gems of the Back Bay, located on Commonwealth Ave, just west of Mass Ave. Now, when most of us hear Tiffany, we think of elaborate stained glass lamps. But here in Boston, we are graced with one of Louis Comfort Tiffany's rare surviving residential projects, and a remarkable survivor it truly is. In fact, it's the sole remaining example of a complete Tiffany residential creation. Thanks to the combined efforts of the Campaign for the Air Mansion, the Trimount Foundation, and Bay Ridge Residence and Cultural Center, who operate the building, this national historic landmark is piece by piece being restored. Completed in 1902, the home contains 30 mosaics, the only known survivors of Tiffany's exterior work, and knock your socks off interiors. The team so far has tackled a wide variety of challenges that took on repair, conservation, and recreation to bring back to Boston, element by element, some of the best public art, and are now on fundraising for Phase 2. Take a walk down Comm Ave and see for yourself. You won't be disappointed. Now, just down the street at the corner of Commonwealth Ave and Hereford Street is the Chi Phi fraternity. Now, when you think of a fraternity house, at least when I think of a fraternity house, intricately carved woodwork, fancy ceilings, and wall coverings don't typically come to mind. But that's what you have here. MIT's Chi Phi, through the Beta Foundation, has owned Andrews House since 1950 and carefully cared for it for generations of fraternity brothers. Completed in 1884, the house is one of the most distinguished works of McKim, Mead, and White, and an important step in the evolution of that important architectural firm. Unlike many Back Bay properties subdivided or even demolished, this one was lucky to get an owner that embraced its original design and interior. Tom Holte and his team of experts have faced challenges of specialty finishes inside and out, ceiling murals, and a unique textured wall covering for which new techniques were developed by conservator Elena Panagakos. They are step-by-step tackling a true conservation project for the entire building, and not only been superb stewards, but are educating MIT students in the process as they live amidst active preservation. Good and persistent stewards like these are hard to come by and deserve our recognition. Let's give them both a round of applause. And the teams could stand up, please. There we go. Back in 2014, we began our fan favorite, voting online, and we've been amazed by the engagement it has engendered. Nearly 40,000 votes since we began. I hope you each participated and voted for your favorite project. Voting ran for 1 month and ended at noon today. Now, while all of our projects are winners because this process really generates healthy engagement and dialogue about preservation in neighborhoods, 2 projects began coming on strong and competing aggressively a little over a week ago. There are emails flying around about voting. People are just getting in the spirit, I suppose. The Bolling Building in Dudley Square and the Godfrey Hotel in Downtown Crossing, the latter district, duked it out until the very end. So first, let's give both of them a round of applause. But in the end, coming out on top was the Bruce C. Bolling Municipal Center. As Roger mentioned, this is a remarkable example of how preservation can truly inspire and change a neighborhood, where a local historic landmark at a key crossroad for generations can be the anchor that brings reinvestment and life back to a struggling neighborhood. Both Mayor Menino and Bruce Bolling would be truly proud. Now, I'd like to ask the team for the Bolling Building to come to the stage to accept the award. Those of you who've been here before may remember what our award is for the fan favorite. Does anyone remember? It's a fan, of course, so come on up for your fan. All right, I'm going to jump right in while they're walking off, because I know we're all getting hungry. I know I am. So, Boston's success is intimately connected with its sense of place. Am I being rude by talking over you, walking off? The wide diversity of our built environment, buildings from the 18th century to those under construction and everything between, a medley of architectural styles and buildings, running the gamut from those still in their original use to those dramatically changed to meet today's needs. From full restorations to bold additions, old meets new, new meets old, and the full spectrum of opportunity these spaces with character provide. That's what makes Boston such a cool place to be, right? Why empty nesters and millennials, high-tech startups, and companies like GE are flocking to our city. What most people don't realize is that there's a company that has been instrumental to the presence of a remarkably wide swath of these buildings, whose creativity and dedication to the long-term success of these buildings has impacted the full breadth of Boston's historic fabric. That company is this year's President's Award winner, Shawmut Design and Construction. We inaugurated this award in 2015. It's given to those who have made a remarkable contribution to enhance the success and vibrancy of the city in a way which aligns with the mission of the Alliance. And I can think of few companies who share the Alliance's goals of protecting places, preserving character, and promoting vibrancy more than Shawmut. From a humble beginning repairing his brother's kitchen in 1979, Dorchester native Jim Ansara formed Shawmut in 1982. Legend has it, believe it or not, that he took the company's name from the Red Line station. And he focused on challenging home renovations that others found too tricky to tackle. An opportunity to renovate a Steve's Ice Cream, for those who remember Steve's Ice Cream, was a critical transition. But throughout it all, he embedded Shawmut with a core philosophy of high-quality results on projects that require much on-site problem solving. And where does that apply more than with historic buildings, with all their exciting but challenging quirks and oddities? And that essence has been baked into the core of Shawmut, with leadership after Jim Ansara through Tom Gomat and now Les Hisco. And central to their work has been Shawmut Director of Historic Preservation, Carl J., who I'm pleased to say, yes, Carl, of course. Carl J., who I'm pleased to say has been a most helpful member of the Alliance's board for 2 decades, and last Friday celebrated 25 years at Shawmut. And I should note that Shawmut's work isn't just here in Boston and not just with historic buildings. Shawmut has offices throughout the country and does a wide variety of work, including all the build-outs of legal seafoods in the U.S., and Shawmut is now one of the largest construction companies in the country with over 1,200 employees. But come with me on a brief walk to see Shawmut's impact on Boston. From Freedom Trail sites like Old North, the Old State House, Quincy Market, and the African American Meeting House, Shawmut's been there. Trinity Church, as we all know, recognized as one of the most significant buildings in the country. Beacon Hill and Back Bay treasures like the American Meteorological Society, the Mass Historical Society. Historic buildings enjoyed by diners, many of you, the U.S. Trust Building, now the Ocean Air Seafood Room. The First Corps of Cadets headquarters, now Smith & Walensky. Shawmut has excelled on college campuses where historic buildings are such a treasured part of their identity. They've been entrusted with some of the most iconic historic, I'm losing it. They've been entrusted with some of the most iconic historic campus buildings in Boston and beyond. From BC to MIT, BU to Harvard, Brown and Yale. And let's not forget modern, with the mid-century Walgreens conversion in downtown Crossing. It's pretty clear why Shawmut projects have won countless Alliance Preservation Achievement Awards, including the Bruce Bolling Building here tonight. And it should require no more explanation why tonight we're honored to present Shawmut Design and Construction with our 2016 President's Award. Accepting for Shawmut is Les Hisco, CEO of Shawmut Design and Construction.
All right. Thank you very much, Greg, and good evening to everyone here. And many thanks to the Boston Preservation Alliance, its leadership and board, the membership that's here, and certainly everyone in the room. It's truly a pleasure and an honor to receive the President's Award for Excellence. So as Greg mentioned, Shawmut has a long history of working on Boston's iconic landmarks: Trinity Church, Quincy Market, Isabella Stewart Gardner, the Old North Church, the Ferdinand Building, otherwise known as the Bruce Bolling Municipal Building, St. Cecilia's Parish, the MFA, and so many more. In a long history of working with the Boston Preservation Alliance, where our founder, Jim Ansara, joined from its inception back in 1978, and then handed the reins to our very own historic preservation legend, Carl J. So thank you, Carl. I've spent my entire career in construction, and as a builder, I feel like I've really been blessed. I've built contemporary new buildings, luxurious new interiors, renovated 100-year-old crumbling brownstones, and restored the concrete of a brutalist museum. Creating new buildings and spaces is fun and rewarding and definitely tangible, but nothing is more fascinating or intriguing than historic preservation. Delving into the past to learn about what those builders and architects were thinking and doing and paying homage to it today is incredibly rewarding. As I thought about tonight, I thought a lot about why historic preservation is so important. I spent last week, fortunately, in Italy, visiting with some of our international clients. I had a little downtime on Wednesday, so I took time to visit Verona, my first time touring this historic city. And I was continually amazed and delighted to see human history, to see it physically in the architecture and cities around us. And it reminds me how young the U.S. truly is. Historic architecture is a gift for us to see today. And over the centuries, preservation happened because people cared. They cared enough to preserve history painstakingly so that future generations could behold it, enjoy it, and learn from it. And we're currently in a place in the U.S. where we need this notion of caring more about preservation, and we need to take it very seriously so that our future generations can learn and enjoy from these buildings. And I want to dwell on that word care for a minute. I joined Shawmut 18 years ago, And I found a company that cared so deeply about their clients that I was immediately hooked. Through Jim and Sarah's and then Tom Gomat's leadership, a strong company culture was created. Today, I'm proud to carry on their leadership legacy, and I like to describe our culture as a culture of care. Care for our clients and the experiences we create for them, care for our people so they can have fulfilling careers and provide good lives for their families, care for our communities, giving back when we achieve success, and most relevant this evening, care for the buildings to which we are entrusted to work on and to preserve. To me, it's the sense of caring that leads to the right mindset about preservation, respect for the history, the tools, the techniques, and the impact that these buildings have had on our lives and on our communities continues to guide us to do it correctly, to care. I mentioned earlier that I find historic preservation to be intriguing. It's not just the physical architecture that we see today. The last part of the word history is story. It's story. It's people and it's their stories. So I want to end with a very brief story. About a year ago, I got a call from a man named Joel Alvord. Joel was the former CEO of Shawmut Bank. I'm sure many of you remember Shawmut Bank, and I've certainly been asked hundreds of times whether there's any relation between Shawmut Design and Construction and Shawmut Bank. And the answer is no. There's no relation except for the name, Shawmut. So Joel tells me he's cleaning out his old offices and wants to know if I want some of the old Shawmut Bank memorabilia. At first I thought, well, if there's no relation, why do I really want this? Until I learned what he was actually offering. Joel had an original bronze sculpture of an Indian bust from 1912. You may recall this was Shawmut's logo. The bust, some 3 feet tall and solid bronze, was of Chief Obetinawat, the sachem of the Mushawomuk tribe. Well, Mushawomuk, phonetically contracted, is Shawmut, and the name of the peninsula, as the Indians referred to it, which today is Boston. Once I heard this story, I knew we, as a prominent company in Boston whose name is Shawmut, needed to be the caretaker of this piece of history. It's now displayed in our newly constructed corporate offices, and its story, printed above it, is a bit of history, a piece of history that I am happy to care for. So to our many partners, friends, colleagues, teammates in the room today, thank you, and congratulations to all the project teams. It's clear to me that you all care tremendously. So we are humbled, we're honored to be in such great company. So thank you again.
Thank you, Les, and thank you for not taking my notes, I think. We're here somewhere. He says before he finds his other award. All right, we've got another set right here. Always prepared. Boston is truly a remarkable city, a city that's booming with investment, with an influx of people. Residency is up, the number of new businesses dramatic. And we're thankful that the vast majority of Bostonians recognize the value of what we have here, the delicate balance between new and protecting what makes Boston special and desirable. The projects and people we awarded tonight, we hope inspire all of you, inspire the city, inspire those who are looking to work here, and inspire to help us keep building upon that sweet spot between old and new that makes Boston so great. That's the work we do each and every day at the Alliance. Helping me do that work is our remarkable staff, and I need to thank them before closing. Now, some of you may know it's been a tricky year planning for this event this year with the welcome of our youngest Preservation Alliance member. Acadia Dawn Frazee, not quite 2 months old, joined us. But we're happy to have Allison Frazee, mom, back just in time to run our images. She's our lead person with all our advocacy work out in the neighborhoods and many evening hearings and meetings. Thank you, Allison. And a huge thank you to Leah Harrington, who joined our staff in June and jumped right into the fray and learned much on the fly in pulling an event like this together. Remarkable work, Leah, if you're out here or probably out front. Finally, before we change gears and turn this stage from ceremony to reception, a few logistical items. As I mentioned at the top, when we conclude award-winning project teams, please head up the stairs to the upper lobby so you can receive your award plaque and we can take some pictures up there. The sooner you head up, the sooner we can get you back to the reception. Now, it'll take the Emerson crew just a few minutes to transform the stage for the reception, but don't feel like you need to rush up to the stage. Some food and drink will be coming down the stairs for you, so you can enjoy some things in the house before you come up to the stage when that's ready. So let's have one final round of applause for all our winners and those who support the Alliance. Finally, thank you all for attending tonight, and thank you all for being such an important part of the community that keeps Boston unique and successful. I look forward to speaking with all of you at the reception.